down at the drive-in. Forget about the plot, you'll do very well, but make sure you see enough so you're prepared to tell about the drive-in. I love the drive-in.
I'm Neal Gabler, and here we are back at the drive-in, Jeffrey.
It's great to be back, Neal, and I'm Jeffrey Lyons, and this is the time of year when people all over the country are filling up their gas tanks and loading up their coolers with soda and heading to the drive-in theaters, where they can still find them for one of the most relaxing, enjoyable ways to take in some of the big, hot summertime movies. And on this, our second annual drive-in special, we'll review 5 big summer movies. Pale Rider, that's Clint Eastwood's new Western, in which once again he's a mysterious stranger who this time tries to save a group of gold miners. And The Emerald Forest, that's a thrilling adventure based on a true story about a boy kidnapped by a tribe of South American Indians and his father's attempt to rescue him. And we'll review St. Elmo's Fire, about some college graduates who were burned out at 22 and whose friendship is the only thing helping them cope with drastic changes in their lives. And The Goonies, that's the Steven Spielberg story about some preteens searching for a pirate treasure and dodging some scary underground booby traps. And we'll review Cocoon, about aliens who've come back to Earth to pick up some long-abandoned comrades they buried eons ago underwater in Atlantis. And we'll also preview some of the big summertime movies coming along later this summer.
And what better place to see big summer movies than right here at the drive-in, so let's go. This is only your second time at the drive-in?
That's right, Neal. I'm
doing this like a real
finally.
drive-in veteran.
That's right. Thank you.
Well, on to the movies. There's no question that one of the big movies at the drive-in this summer is going to be Pale Rider, which is Clint Eastwood's first Western since The Outlaw Josie Wells. That's one of my favorite Westerns. Now, Pale Rider is about a bunch of hard-working miners who are being run off their land by a powerful mining baron who wants to own the whole valley. And in this scene, one of the miners has gone into town for supplies, and the baron's henchmen are about to set fire to his wagon when a mysterious stranger arrives. And I'll give you one guess who it is.
Shouldn't play with matches. There's nothing like a nice piece of hickory.
Well, it turns out that Eastwood is a preacher, and he moves into the miners' camp to help rally their spirits against the bad guys. But the bad guys finally run out of patience and give the miners an ultimatum. And that's when Clint decides to pay a visit to the land baron's mining operations with a few calling cards of his own. Explosive scene. Well, I think it's pretty obvious that Eastwood has set out here in Pale Rider to make one of those classically constructed Westerns like Shane or one of those things, one that's streamlined, pared down to the basics. You know, good miners on the one side, a bad land baron on the other side, and a powerful force, namely Eastwood himself, to tip the balance. And I think it's also pretty obvious in Pale Rider that Eastwood understands not only how a Western operates, but how he operates on the audience, and that's what's working here. Every time he comes on screen, you can't help but feel this vicarious charge because he knows exactly how to get you going. Now, I wouldn't call this the fastest moving picture that I've seen recently. It takes its time. But Pale Rider is a very effective, very elegant Western, and what's probably more important, it's a very effective vehicle for Eastwood, and I really liked it.
Neil, I agree with you. Me liking a Clint Eastwood movie.
You like
That's
Clint
right.
Eastwood? First you liked Chuck Norris a few weeks ago and Coda Science, now Clint Eastwood.
This may be my favorite Clint Eastwood of all time. It's one of the best Westerns in a long time. They don't make many Westerns anymore.
It's the only Western in a long time.
Yes, he's working on us perfectly. There are scenes where he appears suddenly, and they turn around, and they look in the same spot, and he's gone, and you love that. You know it's coming. He is good against evil. It's almost a remake of Shane in many instances. There's a character here named Barrett who corresponds to the one in Shane named Starrett, and some of the characters are familiar, but you don't mind. You've seen it 100 times before, but nobody does it better than Eastwood.
Well, he's working on a mythic level.
Absolutely.
Here. The more popular he becomes, the more he tries to explore his popularity and the mythic qualities that he has, and he has got to be the most exhilarating actor, I would say, practically in the history of movies.
I wouldn't go that far, and you always kid me, meanwhile, about how I hate violence, but here it's almost Western comic
because the
book.
violence is exhilarating.
It's like, well, it's like reading a pulp novel. You know it's going to come, and you don't mind it. This Western really worked for me. It's stark, it's dark, it's beautiful, and I really liked it. I think it's one of the best pictures of the year.
On Pale Rider.
Two definite.
One of the best pictures of the year.
I think so. Clint Eastwood.
You're coming
That's
around.
right. Well, we'll see, Neil. Meanwhile, our next movie is The Emerald Forest. That's an exotic adventure based on a true story. Now, when an American construction executive is posted to Brazil to build a dam in the Amazon jungle, he takes his family along for a picnic near the leafy rainforest there.
People? What kind of people?
Smiling people.
He just wants you to play with him.
Oh.
Okay, big boy, let's go have a look. All right, come on, come on.
There, I'll show you.
Yes, huh? Where are they? Smiling people, huh? Come on. I don't see anybody.
They were here.
All right, come on, let's go.
His young son is kidnapped by Indians, and his father spends the next 10 years searching for the boy, and finally finds him. And in this scene, they're fleeing a tribe of cannibals. It's a really exciting sequence, and the movie is filled with sequences like that. The Emerald Forest is a beautiful-looking adventure thriller, as haunting as its exotic, unusual setting. It unfolds slowly, carefully giving us a fascinating glimpse at the same time into life among some of the world's most primitive and mysterious people. But even though it evokes memories for me of Little Big Man and A Man Called Horse and Man in the Wilderness and other movies about white men living among the Indians, the Emerald Forest worked for me because it all seemed plausible. Oh yes, fantastic and dreamlike in appearance, I'll grant you, and with the final 10 minutes I didn't really need, but entirely plausible nevertheless. In fact, despite its flaws, I found The Emerald Forest to be one of the best adventure movies I've seen in a long, long time. So, for me, Neil, a real definite yes. I love this movie.
I liked it too, and I'm going to give it a yes. It's a weird adventure movie because it's not broad and bombastic the way that Spielberg's adventure movies are, and it's not exhilarating the way that a Pale Rider is or an Eastwood
picture is. Well, it's not trying to be. It's a different set of moods here.
Yeah, well, it's very, I mean, for me, it's not the plausibility so much that works as the exoticism. It's almost like watching a documentary. And by the end of the picture, There's something very touching about the collaboration between civilization, represented by the father, and nature, represented by this boy who's been absorbed by this native tribe.
Well, we haven't given away much except for the fact that the father does find his son, but you'd expect the son immediately to go home to civilization, but it doesn't work out that way, and that's another thing about this picture, made by the same man who made Deliverance, John Borman, that I like, and Excalibur too. In other words, there are surprises here at every turn. These are real people, and it's entirely plausible, as I said, and horrifying, the idea of possibly losing a son.
And it's like watching a documentary.
Absolutely.
I think that's one of the virtues
Very
of the movie.
unusual
So,
picture.
2 yes votes on
Yes,
this
sir.
one. Well, now on to our next picture. And here's another movie that you're probably going to be seeing at a drive-in this summer. It's a drama called St. Elmo's Fire. It's a drama that tries to put together a kind of all-star team of young actors. There's Rob Lowe and Andrew McCarthy. You may remember them from Class. And there's Ali Sheedy, Emilio Estevez, and Judd Nelson from The Breakfast Club. And there's Demi Moore, who played the daughter in Blame It on Rio. Now, they're playing a group of pals who've just graduated from college, and they're out on their own for the first time. And here, one of them returns to his cluttered apartment to tell his roommate that he's just been smitten.
Quick, what's the meaning of life?
Dale Bieberman.
Who?
Dale Bieberman. Didn't you see her at the hospital tonight? She's a girl that I was madly in love with when we were freshmen. Okay, she's about yay tall. Long, dark hair, beautiful face. Okay, remember that big fountain, the one on main campus, the one that says knowledge, art, religion, life? The day that we were walking past that, she was sitting on the life side, and she just smiled at me.
What are you talking about? You took her to one movie.
Kevin, there are several quintessential moments in a man's life. Losing his virginity, getting married, becoming a father, and having the right girl smile at you.
I'm not going to live through another year of finding your poorly written unmailed love scratchings around this house.
Zing. I have her hospital schedule. It's true love, my friend.
Love. You know what love is? Love is an illusion created by lawyer types like yourself to perpetuate another illusion called marriage, to create the reality of divorce and the illusionary need for divorce lawyers.
I just can't deal with the little missus.
Can I crash? You know, there are more people in law school right now than there are lawyers on the entire planet. Think about that.
You're just off and bitter because you have not had sex in how long? What is it, a year, maybe 2 years? Refresh my memory, please, Kevin. Haven't you ever heard of the sexual revolution?
Who won, huh? Nobody. Used to be sex was the only free thing. No longer. Alimony, palimony. It's all financial. Love's an illusion.
It's the only illusion that counts, my friend.
Says who?
Anyone who's ever been in love.
The cynic there is Andrew McCarthy. I think he's the best of this cast. Now, it seems that each of these buddies comes equipped with his or her own special crisis. One's a suspected homosexual. One's promiscuous. One is selling out to the establishment. One's totally aimless and irresponsible. And one, the one who's living with the guy who's selling out, discovers that her boyfriend's been having an affair.
What are we going to do about your extracurricular love life? Huh?
What extracurricular love life?
Oh, come on.
What did Kevin tell you?
Nothing.
What'd you tell her? What did you tell her?
He told me nothing. It was just a hunch. Until now.
They need either a pre-marriage counselor or a boxing coach. I don't know which.
A lot more than that, Neal.
Well, I think St. Elmo's Fire wants to be a sort of post-adolescent breakfast club. You know, this honest look at the crises of post-adolescence. And I think if you take it that way, you're going to find it's a bunch of hogwash. The thing is, I wound up liking this movie, but not for the reasons I'm sure that the filmmakers would be happy about, because I don't think it's at all honest and sensitive and realistic. I think it's a good soap opera. What's going to happen to irresponsible Rob Lowe? Will Andrew McCarthy find true happiness? Will Ali Sheedy finally realize that her boyfriend's a total jerk? I mean, there's enough melodrama here to fill out an entire season of Dallas or an episode of Dynasty. But this movie is wildly melodramatic and wildly romantic, and it's even a tearjerker. And who needs realism when you've got all that?
Well, I need a lot more than that, Neal. I am so tired of movies about young people saying how terrible life is. They're washed out here, they're 22. All it is the big chill all over again, buddy movies. I'm tired of that. You chided me a few weeks ago for liking a movie that is nothing you said but a miniseries, which you can get on TV. Here, you're doing the same thing. You can get it at seeing Dynasty in Dallas.
Well, the pleasure of this movie is storytelling, and that's not a pleasure to be scoffed at. This movie tells a good, lurid story. And episode by episode, scene by scene, I found myself getting sucked in, answering these kinds of melodramatic questions that I just asked.
If there'd been no Breakfast Club, if there'd been no Big Chill, maybe. But I've seen this before, and I just couldn't get involved.
This has more story than those two movies.
A little bit, I suppose.
This is a lot more story.
I think it's a good idea to see these actors when they're young and early in their careers, but there's not enough here that I haven't seen before to get me involved in this picture.
Well, it's not a good movie, but I think it's a fun movie.
So one yes from you and one no from me.
Yes.
Well, on to something completely different now, Neal. A much bigger movie this summer, and our next movie, in fact, and it's The Goonies. It's the Steven Spielberg-produced thriller based on an original story by Spielberg. Notice I didn't say he directed The Goonies. No, officially, Richard Donner, who made Superman, was behind the lenses here, but Neal, who keeps track of these things, tells me that Steven Spielberg directed a few scenes, but officially it's Richard Donner. Well, anyway, here's the setup. A group of suburban kids, a favorite Spielberg theme, call themselves the Goonies, and will soon have their homes torn down to make way for a golf course. And their last day in their old homes, they're rummaging through the attic, and they make an important discovery.
What are you doing? Hey, Mike found the map. Yeah. Hey, look. That says 1632. Is that a year or something? No, it's your top score on pole position. Yes, it's a year, Chuck. Look, it's a map of our coastline.
What's all that Spanish junk right there?
Who knows, Mouth, you said you could translate. Translate, right here. Yeah, translate it. Ye intruders beware, crushing death and grief, soaked with blood of the trespassing thief.
You guys, this map is old news. Everybody and their grandfather went looking for that when our parents were our age. I mean, haven't you ever heard of that guy? What's his name? The pirate guy. One-Eyed Willie.
One-Eyed Willie. Yeah, he was the most famous pirate in his time. My dad told me all about him once.
Dad'll do anything to get you to go to sleep.
No. See, One-Eyed Willie stole treasure once. It was full of rubies and emeralds and diamonds.
So following the pirate map, they find themselves in an underground cave, pursued by a trio of criminals, also hot on the trail of that pirate treasure. But they've also got to avoid a maze of Rube Goldberg booby traps. Hang on.
Don't move. You guys, don't move back there. Don't move. Land free. Guys! Guys, let's go. Run, you guys, run! Oh, let's go down there.
Well, now I grant you those brief moments may have looked exciting, but those are about all the thrills I found in The Goonies. It's plagued by problems. For one thing, you'll understand about every fourth word. The bland young actors mumble their lines or keep talking over each other, which drives me crazy in a movie. So you'll have to make up dialogue you missed. That, I think, is inexcusable. And all this is just a bunch of kids in a funhouse setting looking for a treasure, and every few minutes looking up and saying, wow, wow. Well, for 10-year-olds, I suppose, with short attention spans, or those too young for Indiana Jones, it's okay. But for anyone older, The Goonies is boring and it's trivial, and there's no sense of danger here, no real thrills. If only Steven Spielberg had directed all of this movie. What a disappointment.
Well, you know, there are movies based on novels, of course, plays, historical events.
I know what you're going to say.
Characters, real historical figures. This movie, Spielberg said, was based on a ride at Disneyland Amusement Park. That about says it all.
That's right.
It's
Take the ride.
push-button movie making. There's no emotional investment in these characters. And I really dislike this movie enormously because I felt it was being used.
Did you find it hard to understand, too? Doesn't that drive you up the wall?
Yeah, but that's not the... I agree with you, but that's not the worst problem here. The worst problem for me here is that the characters don't extend beyond the plot of this movie. And the characters have no life beyond just the storytelling.
There's the fat kid and the kids who fall in love and all these things that you've seen before in better films. And I've seen those kind of booby traps in Indiana Jones. It's just trivial. It's not worth the effort. That's right.
I really think, and even for kids, I wouldn't recommend this movie.
So two no's.
Two no's on this one. Well, now something better than that.
I hope so.
We come to Cocoon, which is a science fiction epic along the lines of Close Encounters. And it's directed by Ron Howard, who last time out gave us Splash, which I think is a wonderful comedy.
Right.
Now, Cocoon begins in St. Petersburg, Florida, where all sorts of strange things are going on. For one thing, some old people at a retirement home sneak into the swimming pool on the fancy estate next door, and suddenly they feel young again. And not too far away, there's a small group of tourists who rent a fishing boat to recover some rocks from the bottom of the ocean. But the captain of the boat, played by Steve Guttenberg, who you probably remember from Police Academy, realizes that these folks aren't your ordinary tourists. They're aliens.
Why don't you let us explain?
Because I don't want to know anything. And if you try to eat my face off or take over my body, you're going to be very sorry, mister. You're going to be very sorry.
Face eating, Jeff? I've never heard of that. Is that some sort of delicacy?
No. Forget I ever mentioned it.
You sure I shouldn't try it, Jeff?
I'm positive.
Walter, Jack is our friend, right, Jack?
Friend. That's right, friend. 100%. I'm your friend. That's all I ever wanted to be. I want to be your friend.
But we do owe you an explanation.
No, you don't owe me anything. You don't, not even the boat, honestly. It's free.
Of course we're going to pay you for the boat. We're honest.
Well, of course you're honest. Did I ever accuse you of being dishonest? I accuse you of being from another planet, but an honest planet.
Well, what's going on is that this group of aliens had visited Earth 10,000 years ago, but they had to leave some crew members behind, sealed up on the ocean bottom. And now they've come back to bring them home. Now, the fact that they're aliens, though, doesn't stop Guttenberg from falling for the girl. And she's played by Raquel Welch's daughter, Tawny. But these aliens have a different notion of making out.
Do you ever want to do anything about it?
Well, not the way you think about it. I mean, I can't.
Oh, right. Right. Well, how does an Ontarian express affection?
We show ourselves.
Right.
Do you want to try it? It's very fulfilling.
I bet it's fulfilling. Well, I was a little disappointed by Cocoon, just a little, and maybe it was that my expectations were too high. It takes an awfully long time to get going. It keeps on taking detours until the plot finally kicks in. And once it does kick in, it's awfully reminiscent of E.T. and especially of Close Encounters. In fact, the ending is right out of Close Encounters. But Ron Howard, the director, who we all know used to be on Happy Days, has a way of taking even familiar stuff like this and giving it two things. One is humor, a rather sweet kind of humor, particularly as the old people rediscover their youth. And the other thing is heart. And Cocoon is just full of heart. Now, as a whole, as I said, it didn't knock me out. But there are individual moments, and quite a few of them, that are very beautiful and moving. And those moments, that heart, are plenty of reason to see Cocoon.
I agree. I liked it, I think, a little more than you did, but I
did like it. Don't get me wrong.
I think this movie has a visual style to it, and what I also liked about it is that we see much of the movie told from the perspective of the elderly people. They're not depicted as feeble, they're not depicted as helpless, they're depicted as intelligent with the same ups and downs in their lives that people who are younger
They're the heroes
have.
of the movie, one might say.
Absolutely. That's what I like most about the picture. I wish the script had been a little different. Even you can add splash to that, too. But there's a visual crispness to Ron Howard's films, just as we've seen Spielberg's movies, and this picture really gets you involved. It's not as good as it could have been. I was mildly disappointed, but it's easily one of the best pictures of this year, which is faint praise, I grant you, but it's still a fine picture.
Well, you know, when E.T. came out, somebody said that this was the best Disney movie that Disney never made. I think that Cocoon is the best Spielberg movie that Spielberg never made. Oddly enough, Spielberg has always tried to be the kind of Frank Capra of modern movies, and I think it's going to turn out that he's more the Howard Hawks, the technician, the professional, the guy who does push the buttons, and that Ron Howard is going to turn out to be the Frank Capra, the man with heart, the man with soul. This is kind of a Frank Capra movie, and that's a very high compliment coming from me, as you know.
It's also a kind of a Close Encounters of the old kind. It's involving and captivating and loads of fun, despite its flaws.
So 2 yes votes.
2 yes votes for Cocoon. Well, the rest of the summer, meanwhile, shows lots of promise when you go to the movies with comedies, some adventure fantasies, and generally films aimed at a wide audience, or so it seems. The likely blockbuster for July and August is supposedly going to be Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. What a great title. It is, of course, the third in the Road Warrior post-apocalyptic trilogy film starring, who else? Mel Gibson, and this time, fiery Tina Turner. And a little later this summer, we'll see Bad Medicine, about the misadventures of a young medical student who has to study medicine down in South America somewhere when no American school will admit him. And yes, as you might expect, it's a bizarre comedy. And Chevy Chase, who's to be seen nowadays in Fletch, returns soon in National Lampoon's European Vacation as the wacky Griswold family invades Europe. And from what I've seen, the staid old continent may never be the same. The Bride, meanwhile, is the latest version of the Frankenstein story coming our way, featuring rock star Sting as the brilliant young scientist. Now, this time, Dr. Frankenstein has created Jennifer Beals, who stars as the bride created for the doctor's mad creature. Sounds loony.
Not a bad thing to create, though, if you're going to create
Jennifer
something.
Beals, that's
well,
right.
I can guarantee that you're going to find 3 movies at the drive-in this summer because they're re-releases of 3 very popular pictures. Steven Spielberg's E.T. doesn't need any introduction, I think. If you've seen it twice, you'll probably want to see it a 3rd time. And if you've never seen it, welcome back from Mars. Gremlins has got to be one of the big hits of last summer. I think it's asinine and even insulting, but if you feel a compulsion to see it, the drive-in is the place, I guess. And finally, there's Ghostbusters with Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd operating a service to exterminate ghosts. Now, Bill Murray is the whole show, but then that's a whole lot of show.
Neil, that's all for this week. Looks like a good summer going to the movies.
And this is our 2nd drive-in annual. Hope we'll be back next year. And until next week, save us the bucket seats.
Every time I have a date, there's only one place to go. That's to the drive-in. It's such a groovy place to talk and maybe watch a show down at the drive-in. So you're prepared to tell about the drive-in. I love the drive-in.